yes, understanding is what it's all about, and thank you so much for being with us here to enjoy a little more understanding of yourself and your surroundings as we have a returning guest who was with us on a very auspicious day. Won't go into it right now, but it was so nice to have her on the program. Her name is Ana Maria Vasquez, and I want to thank you so much for not only rejoining us, but also to talk with us more partly about your book, Nature. Thank you for being back.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for having me back. The last time I was here, again, it was an auspicious day and there was just such a flow in everything. And I love it when we've got that connection and with the audience. So I'm grateful to be back and take the conversation deeper to the next level.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. And we're going to do that. She, of course, as I mentioned, she's written a book called Nature, Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscape. And of course, this does also include, folks, the areas around us that we live in, and that has to do with the animals. And that's really going to be sort of the main focus of today's program, is talking about the animals. But just to let you know that this particular book, Nature, as I'll just go into this just a little bit. And by the way, folks, we will be linked to her website, but actually it's going to be a special link. This interview will have a very special link that you sent to me, Anna. And tell us a little bit about this link. When people click on it, what's going to happen?
It's going to take them to my website. And what's beautiful is this gives them an opportunity, the people who listen to you on a regular basis and really benefit from everything that you bring forward in these phenomenal conversations. If they feel led to purchase a course or anything that they come across on my webpage through that link, it's going to earn a commission for this show. So it's my way of giving back too as well. So it's a beautiful way. When we all do better, we all do better.
And thank you for doing that for them and for us here on Tell Me Your Story. By the way, folks, just to give you a little rundown, all right? I just want to share this with you before we jump into our main topic dealing with the fauna of the world. This book is broken into 3 parts. The book Nature, Understanding the Natural World. And of course, our guest, Ana Maria Vasquez, shares how the mystical takes form in nature and how nature speaks to us. Have you ever stopped and really listened? Sometimes, especially right now, and I folks, if you're watching the YouTube, you'll see this every once in a while. Ana Marie's hair flips up. It's like there's a breeze blowing. Well, it's been kind of breezy here in California. I'll tell you what, I don't have to worry about my hair flying all over the place. But sometimes you just want to stop and listen to the wind. And it's a beautiful thing, As a matter of fact, what was it I heard this morning on one of the programs I was producing, that the wind makes no sound unless there is some resistance to it, i.e. the trees and so forth. You can hear it rustling through the trees. Part 2 of the book, Divine Experience with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscapes. Basically, you'll read and it reveals as our sacred storytellers share their personal experiences with nature. And the greatest teacher of all, as I have said this, I don't think I said this in our last interview, maybe I did, that our greatest teacher, and I so seriously believe this, even though I'm not always in class at the time, nature is our greatest teacher, as it says here. Basically including healing joy received from a plum tree, rocks that transmute a woman's fear into peace, loving messages from nature allowing a sister to let her beloved brother go. I can relate to that from the opposite side. A sentinel tree. Oh, I can relate to this one too. A sentinel tree witnessing a granddaughter's short life. Tree spirits that, and I say that because we talked last program about our tree Ben. and talking about how happy he is. Tree spirits that lift a man's heart and allow lightness and magic into his life, and water spirit that requests collaboration for healing of the waters. Part 3 of the book, Deepening Your Connection with Nature, and of course our guest Ana Maria Vasquez encourages you to take it into your listening and open to the sentinel world you are a part of. That's right. You are a part of nature as well. Recognize that you are nature and why it's important to have reverence. Check your vibe and ask permission to begin co-creating with the natural world. I'd like to think too, and you've probably seen these programs where they're building tree houses in these. I mean, these are unbelievable mansions in the trees. I would hope that because I've seen what they do to mount the foundation into the tree, that they ask permission, you know. There's this limb that's hanging down in front of the entrance to my shed that is under Ben. I want to cut that limb because it's kind of in the way, but I figure for the time being, I'm going to leave it there. I'll duck or I'll go around. I'll go around the limb and I can still get in. It's not keeping me from getting in. But it's a beautiful tree, and Ben is caring for and actually being nurtured by what I like to call our little cemetery of animals that I have buried around the base of Ben, as well as other places on the property, but primarily there. And especially my beloved Makushla, who went a few years back in October. And, I'm just glad that she's there and he's there. And actually, I know that she is not so much there as much as I was told. She will be sort of over my right shoulder and just kind of watching out, and actually was happy that she was able to get out of that body so that she could be more help to me. So I thought that was really cool. So when we're talking about nature, we are talking about the animals, Anna. So let's start at the beginning. Nature. Animals 101. Where do you want to start us off, and then away the universe takes us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting, and in the book, in the second section, right, where there's all the short stories by the contributing authors, I have a couple stories in there too. And one of them is about how I connected with a tree. And the reason I was connecting with the tree was because my heart's desire was to talk to the animals. And the trees started talking first. So that threw me for a loop, but they promised me that the animals were coming, and right as rain, the animals did come in a really profound way. In fact, within a few weeks of that tree talking to me, I had an experience where I went out and I took my dogs out at night, right? And they went one way, and I stood there and I turned around and I was going to go do something else. And I stopped because I was going to trip over a dog that wasn't really there, but I could see it like a holographic overlay. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what the heck? And I look again and it's not there. And I'm like, what's going on? And I heard in my head, you'll know when it's time. And at that point, I was doing kind of life coaching with folks, intuitive life coaching. And I was working with a client, and all of a sudden it was like a tap on my shoulder. It was like, ask her about the dog. And I thought, oh boy, right? Like, oh man, this is it. The gig's up. I'm a fraud. This is going to be laid out right here. I've clearly lost my mind. So I told her, I said, well, tell me about the black dog with the white on the ears and on the chest. And it gets real quiet, right? Which is not a good sign on my end. I'm like, oh no. And she starts crying. And she goes, that's not possible. That dog's been gone for 14 years. Oh, and I said, well, I don't know what to tell you, but he was in my yard last night. And so we went in and we got some messages, again, very similar to what your dog has shared. I'm with you. I'm still with you. And that was the start, right, of the floodgates opening and a deeper understanding of the animals and what goes on with us. And that piece about when they cross, right? Like that's the hardest part as a pet parent, as an animal guardian, right? Like that is the hardest aspect of our whole relationship with them, aside from potty training and chewing up shoes and stuff. But what I learned when one of my soul dogs crossed, and she was the one actually who also was helping me with animal communication and understanding how it works and all the logistics and things like that. So when she crossed, she came back very quickly. Actually, the afternoon, or she passed in the morning, and we were doing a funeral pyre for her actually, so we had to keep her body in the horse trailer. And then that afternoon there was a storm that came in and a rainbow, and when you looked outside, the rainbow ended where the horse trailer was. And I knew at that moment, it's not over. She's still here, she's still going to help me. And she took me by the hand and helped me through that transition process that we struggle with so much. I mean, all of us know nothing on this earth is designed to be here forever. Everything has a cycle, right? To everything, turn, turn, turn. There's a season, but we struggle with that part of the season so much. And so she explained to me that when they pass, we still have the connection, but we get distracted by the sadness, by the grief, by the story. And here they are working this energy so hard to make a connection with us. And so what happens is, we're going through our day and we get the thought of them, or we hear a noise that sounds like them. And we have a split second of, oh, my dog, or oh, my cat, or whatever. And then we immediately go into the grief because we're like, oh, but they're not here anymore. And the dog's like, oh my God, I tried so hard to get through the energy. And then we dismiss it. So I work with a lot of animal guardians during that time, and I help them pay attention. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you hear the collar, right, you hear the tags, or you hear the scratch at the door, and you know that they're past, that can't possibly be, you need to just say, yes, please, thank you, more. And they'll be able to show up more and more. And you know how when they're still embodied, when they're in the room, even though you can't see them, you can feel them, it's the same thing. And so during that grieving time, you're really going through a recalibration process, because the energy is neither created nor destroyed, it simply changes form. And so if we, instead of dismissing and saying, oh, that can't be, if we lean into the possibility, we open ourselves up to have more profound encounters with them from the other side. And it's not even from the other side, because like you said, with your dog right there over your shoulder, they're right there. I see that so many times. I'm like, if you put your hand down right now, you could feel your Cocker Spaniel or whatever animal it was. And so the more that we lean into that, the more we can have those experiences, and the more they can assist us in a way that they couldn't when they were embodied.
That's interesting too, because we, even as spiritual beings, we have the capacity to help others on a spiritual level while we are here. Are animals that much different that they don't have that capacity while in physical, or is it more that the body, I don't know, maybe interferes with that ability until they pass?
Well, my understanding of the whole thing, and what I've been told by countless animals, is it's more like they're these furry guides, right? So they're here and they are actually the wise one, right? They're the teacher. It's the, who saved who kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there to help us remember things. Now, when an animal's in the wild, they direct their energy to finding food, not being food, mating, all of these things. When they live with us, when they move into our home, we take care of all that stuff for them, right? Like something's not going to come around the corner and eat them. And we've taken care of the mating thing one way or another. And so they direct all their attention and energy to us. And think about this, right? Like when we're having a good day and our dog comes up to us, we are like playing with them, we're wrestling on the floor, we're handing out treats like they won the lottery. And when we're in a bad mood or we're in our head, we're constricted, and they come up to us and they, push our arm with their nose or whatever, we're like, go lay down, right? We're very stern and we're constricted. So they know, let me pay attention to your energy because this affects me in a big way. And my understanding of, we all have these soul contracts, that we're remembering things or doing things or expanding or whatever, right? And with animals, my understanding is they, especially with companion animals, mostly with companion animals, they are in our field and they help process energy that we can't, don't want to, or don't know how to. So, in our own body, right? If we don't deal with stuff, that stagnant energy is going to show up as dis-ease in the body somewhere.
Yeah.
It'll be the same with the animals, right? So if we're just not paying attention to our stuff and the animal's having to process it, it's going to show up either in their body physically or as a behavioral issue. And the truth is, we think about, animals we've rescued, right? Well, I didn't beat that dog when it was a puppy. I didn't put it through those things. But there's this law of attraction, right? Like attracts like. And so there's a thread of energy that animal went through or experienced or is still carrying that's similar to something within us. Usually that needs healing or needs the light shined on it in one way or another. And so the way I say it is the animals reflect our inner terrain. So what's going on, not between us and them necessarily, but us and the rest of the world, right? If we have issues with boundaries, we're probably going to have either a fear-aggressive dog or an animal that urinates inappropriately, right? There's these boundary issues. There's also correlations with the different chakras. If we are having trouble, again, with that solar plexus, standing in our power, we might get a dog that jumps up a lot that we don't want them to be jumping up like that. Right. So they're reflecting back this energy. So when I do sessions with people, it's so funny. When I first started doing it, I thought, oh, I'm going to find out like what their favorite treats are, who their favorite people are, where, and they do tell me those things, but very quickly they turn it around. Let's talk about my human. Let's talk about what's going on with my human. Let me tell you what I'm pointing to with this energy that I'm showing, that I'm displaying. And I've had people take their dog to the vet and lab results have changed based on the awareness that the human brings to the situation. And so when we bring the physical, whatever's going on in the physical, and we can look at things that we can do, but when we pair that with the energetics, it like turbo boosts the whole process, and we can move through these issues a lot easier.
We are talking with Ana Maria Vasquez, author of Nature. We hope that you will continue listening and hopefully understanding here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's a pleasure to have her as a returning guest, Ana Maria Vasquez, author of the book, and it's entitled Nature, Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscape. And, of course, we're incorporating into this, I don't know how it would have fit in the title, nonetheless, animals. We're talking about that element of our world. And it's been said, and I hadn't really thought about it from that standpoint as much, although I'm getting an experience of this now. When our dog is, who is my wife's protector, that's how she praises it, and I agree with her, a big 100-pound black king shepherd, Angus, when he, in the evening, he's quiet all day long. Now, she is, as we're speaking, she's on some family leave due to an injury, and he's quiet all day long. Although she told me today, as our conversation here, that he's been talking to her a lot, and she's been talking back to him. Not in words, but in the same kinds of sounds that he's making. But when I get home in the evening, it's like all of a sudden his energy just goes through the roof, and he just wants to play and run around and, and go outside and come back in and go outside and come back in. And it's like, I don't know. I just came home, okay? It's not my fault, And I know that he's happy to see me. And I know that he's also happy not just to see me, but to see us together.
Yes.
It's not it's not a singular thing. And then again, it has
Off
nothing to do.
duty, right? You
What?
show up
Yeah.
and he's off duty because you're her protector. He gets that. So
Yeah.
he's like, oh, now I get to be a dog, right? Now I
Yeah.
can go play. I can, do whatever. I can come in and out.
Exactly. And I mean, and it's that scenario you talk about. It's like, oh, come on, Angus, lie down. Angus, lie down. You know, and I don't want to keep saying that, but I'm not saying it in a mean way. I'm just being stern, saying, listen to me, be obedient. You are a smart dog, and we tell him this all the time. And on rare occasions, we will say, hey, Angus, you're being a bad dog. You are being a bad dog. You're smarter than this. You know better, and that kind of stuff. And I keep thinking, okay, do I need to change my demeanor? I don't think that would make any difference because it's where he is in that present moment of, oh, good. As you just said, I can take off the uniform. I'm good to go now.
It's his playtime.
It's playtime. Now, he will calm down considerably, even if I go out into the studio and close the door. And, he can't see me, but he knows I'm there. Because, again, they feel that energy. When you have animals around you, even if they're not physically in your presence, they're somewhere else in the house, in the dwelling. Do you get a sense of maybe their discomfort? I mean, it's like they're there and they radiate this great energy that, they say that animals will help to lower one's blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. What's your perception when you talk about your own animals, and you just kind of I guess we start diving into the intuition now, our intuition, because we know the animals have it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm just a personal assistant here, right? Like I open doors, I plan meals, I provide transportation. I'm under no illusions about my role. All day long I'm helping everybody else with their animals, but I'm pretty much just here to be the personal assistant for our Great Dane, our horses, our chickens, and our cat, and many various wild animals that will show up.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, like, and all of us know this, even people who wouldn't call themselves an animal communicator. We know that we can tell what our animals are thinking. Yeah. We know, I mean, and they're really good at letting us know, right? Like they've honed this in over the years. That's how they got in our packs and in our tribes to begin with. But we can feel, right, when they're not quite right, when they're just off. And we can feel into that some more. So a lot of times people will contact me when they're like, something's wrong and I don't know what it is. And we've been to the vet and everything seems fine. And so I, of course, can go in and have a conversation with the animal and ask. And as a multisensory intuitive, I'll get the information in different ways. For me, the strongest one is I'll feel it. I'll feel the personality of the dog first, right? Like I'll be like, this dog's looking at me sideways in the door and really won't kind of come in. And she's like, yeah, he's kind of skittish with new people. And I'm like, well, give him a second. And then by the end, he's like sitting in my lap energetically, like it feels like that. Or I'm like, how big is this dog? Because I'm pretty sure it's a tiny dog, but it's showing me itself as like huge, like a Grand Pyrenees or something. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a little Chihuahua, but it thinks it runs the roost and it thinks it's as big as, a shepherd or something. So I'll usually feel the personality first. And then I'll get phrases or images that I'll see either in my mind's eye or like we talked about the one dog where it's like a holographic overlay. And I'll kind of see them for a second, like in Star Wars with the projection from R2-D2, like that. I'll see it kind of like that where I know it's not the physical, but I can still see what's happening, or like a movie image, and it kind of comes in all at once. And so then I can relay a story or the information that I'm getting. Like I had someone contact me about a dog that kept holding his leg up, but there was nothing wrong with the leg, right? Like they've checked the paw, the pads. There's no pain when they touch any of the muscles. Excuse me. And so when I felt in, I was like, that's not where the pain is. It's a referred pain. The pain is inside. It's on that left side. And so then I'll see an image of like, sometimes it's like a generic anatomy chart, right? You know, like when you see those commercials where they're like, oh, the back pain, and it's a red arrows pointing to the back or whatever. I'll see that, right? But in a dog shape. And I'm like, what organ is that even, right? And it was the spleen. And I was like, something's going on with one of the organs on that side. It feels to me like it would be a spleen issue. And so sure enough, they go to the vet, they run some tests on that, and they're like, yeah, we don't understand. These numbers are off the chart. So it's helpful, right? Because I can work in synergy with people who really know what they're doing and can really help the dog, but we can give them some direction to point them in the right direction to help the animal, maybe before it progresses too far where you couldn't help.
Yeah, and there is, as they say, there is a point of no return in that regard,
Right.
because, it's. I know that a lot of folks have difficulty with this part of it, and that is that money does become a major issue sometimes, and that's a hard one because you want to do everything for them, but at the same time, you also are balancing the maintaining of the tribe, the family, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's something that is a real challenge for people. I know for us as well, with the animals that we've had, we've actually gone through the process, of course, of and I have to say that we learned this lesson after 3 of the 4 members of the Siberian Husky pack had passed, or I should say, we took them to the vet, and the other dogs that we left at the house went down from 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1. They had no idea what had happened to their mother, their father, their sister. And then when the last one was left with his sister, and we found his sister stuck somewhere, and apparently it had some kind of a stroke, and we had to take it to get it put down, he went nuts. We went to work one day, and my wife got a call from the neighbor saying, your dog has been howling all morning. Yeah. And that's when Makushla came along and became his caregiver, as it were. And then, of course, we moved them here to Santa Barbara. And, it was like, wow, the grieving of an animal can be so intense, especially when you have that dynamic of a pack, which is part of their instinct. And I find that even humans will develop that as well. And when the pack, for example, I come from a pack of 8, and when one of them leaves, in whatever form they leave in, such as my sister, yeah, there's a vacuum there, and eventually that vacuum is filled, that hole is filled, but a lot of times it's not filled by anyone or anything, it's filled in by the rest of us, and we're not forgetting her. I don't know that there's a day gone by since her passing day that I haven't thought of her or heard her. Probably hearing her less and less these days, but that doesn't bother me in the least. It's just that I don't need her guidance in that respect, but I don't want to forget her. And then there are those moments that I'm thinking, my God, she's gone. Wow, it's almost a revisiting, but it doesn't feel the same as it did the very first day by any means. It's very interesting. We're talking with Ana Maria Vasquez. The book is Nature, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're talking about the animal world when it comes to nature. And of course, we're talking with Ana Maria Vasquez, and we're talking about her book, Nature, the Divine Experience with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscape, as well as animals. And of course, she is a well-known you mentioned this earlier, multi-sensory animal and nature intuitive. You're also the founder of the Intention Training as well as Master Teacher and Sacred You Instructor, which we talked about in our last program. And folks can go to your website, which is intentiontraining.com, to find out more. Folks, we'll also have a very special link where you can go to her website, and it will help to support her, but also will help to support Tell Me Your Story. So anytime you go there and make a purchase, it will give us a little bit of financial support at this end. So, you're going to get something in exchange for, I'll put it this way, for your contribution to the work that she is doing and the work that we are doing. It's a sort of a 2-for-1. A 2-for-1.
Well, right? When we do better, we all do better. It's
Exactly.
so beautiful
Unlike
like that.
my surgeon who took out my gallbladder, refused to take out my appendix, I thought, well, while you're in there, you might as well, because who knows, it may go on the fritz here in the near future. I hope not, but it might. So why not just take it out now? So, I'm sorry, we don't do twofers. There you go. Plus the fact that I think my surgery, when I finally got the final bill before insurance, it was like $60,000. Really? We've got the tools here at the radio station in a toolbox. I could have done it myself, but you know how that is. A lawyer, what is it? A dentist has a fool for if he's got himself as a patient, he has a fool for a patient. I think the same thing would be true for a surgeon or a lawyer, for that matter. When we talk about the animals, and I'll share this with you, the day we came home knowing that was the day that we were going to, and I put it this way, that we were going to set Makushla free. It almost sounds like we're going to take her collar off and run, girl, run. It's kind of in a way. The body was the collar. As we're getting out of the truck and we're getting ready to go into the house, a hawk flew over the house. And we both looked up, and then we looked at each other, and not that I have an intellectual knowledge of what in the world a hawk means when it flies over. I just had this feeling that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. The hawk is here to help her in that sense.
And it also feels like it was honoring you, right? For what you were doing. Hawk is about a different perspective, right? That higher perspective. Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like, even though we know it's time, right? The animal has told us, the vet has told us, maybe even you spoke with an animal communicator, everybody knows it's time, but it's still hard, right? Because we're like, we're the one who makes the final decision. But what a gift. I mean, we're not even able to do that with our human family to assist them over, although that's changing as well. But that assistance, that they don't have to stay trapped. And so for you to get that sign, right? Like you said, you didn't have to know exactly, but you knew it was good.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it in terms of honoring us, but I certainly can understand that. I know that the feelings were quite similar when we released a purebred, pedigreed German Shepherd. Her name was Bridget. Now, she had another name before, when we took her in. And it was actually the 15th of April. I don't remember what year it was. My wife knew this patient who had just lost his wife, and he had this German Shepherd puppy that was it was growing up and really was becoming very difficult to handle, and he was having trouble with his own stability and so forth. And so she was going to go over to his house, take some pictures. We were going to create a flyer and open the door for somebody to take him in. And of course, I am in the control room of the radio station doing a ball game. And all of a sudden, I hear the back door of the station open. And, you talked earlier about how, you hear the collar, you hear the little tags jingling. I heard it, and I knew exactly what was coming through the door. I knew exactly. I was like, wait a minute, no. You were supposed to take pictures, not the dog. Well, the dog, Bridget, was not welcome by Angus. And we had multiple trainers come over to try to work with the two of them. We even worked together. We were out in the backyard with the two of them. I had a hold of Angus, and he wanted at her so bad, and I grabbed a hold of him. He swung his head around, and he grabbed my arm with his mouth. He didn't bite. He just held on. I did not try to escape. I knew he was upset. I don't want her here. I am the king. Get her out of here. Now, it took 14 months. We had to keep them separate. Now, Makushla got along fantastic with her. Angus, no. And when we first got her, for about 3 months, as we headed into the summer, I would take each of them out for a walk in the morning before we would go to work. And I kind of enjoyed that. But it began to kind of wear on both of us. And I wanted to find a home for her sooner rather than later. But because I could kind of feel that he just was not interested in anybody else being there. He wants to be king of the manor, which he is now. In spite of the fact that my wife keeps saying, let's get us some shepherd puppies or some husky puppies, and we'll have him the lead dog on the sled that we have. It's like, that's not up to us. And I already know Angus is not going to be happy, even with puppies, okay? They're still intruders. Yeah. So anyway, sometimes we do have to make those hard decisions. It may not be to put an animal down. It may mean we've got to let them go. We've got to find some place for them. We had to do that with another cat, who actually we found as a kitten on the property, who had apparently been dumped. And we took him in, and he just was having problems with the other animals as he got bigger and bigger, to where we said, we've got to figure a way to, and we were connected with an organization. We know this instinctively, but we fight it, don't we? I mean, all the time.
Right. Well, right, because we think, oh my gosh, we need to give this animal a home, or whatever baggage we have around it. But sometimes we're just the conduit, right? Like, we're holding the space with them, kind of like a foster, until the right human or the right setting comes along for them. And you're right. It's like that, what you said about the wind. We don't hear it unless there's resistance. Mm-hmm. And that resistance for everything in our lives is what trips us up over and over. And if we let go of attachments of how we think it should look or how we think it should be, then it's so much smoother. And that next piece can come in more easily. And it's true, right? There are times that some animals are like, not no, but hell no. I don't want any other animals around. And then there's other ones that are like, great, the more the merrier, let's do this, And we just have to, just like as any other family or tribe or pack, we get all the voices represented at the table and we make the decisions based on that. Yeah. But it doesn't mean we failed the animal. In fact, we may have assisted it in getting to where it needed to be to really fulfill whatever it was that animal was here to do.
I know I had to explain that to my wife, because I said, look, we fostered kittens. All right. Now, granted, we took in about 5 to 7 of them over the years.
Foster fail.
Yeah. In addition to the 4 that we brought with us from Phoenix, we did that with Bridget. We fostered her for 14 months. All right. We gave her a fantastic home. There's one element, I find this interesting too, that animals learn from each other. There was one element where Bridget, when she wanted a cookie, she would lie down. I mean, she just did that. Angus never did that and never saw her do it. And after she was gone, he started doing that. Yeah.
He's like, I didn't like her, but she was onto something.
Yeah. And now he does it all the time. He doesn't always lay down, and I don't always make him do that. But I will most of the time make him sit. And then he'll take it, and that's another thing too, is animals, especially the big animals, the big dogs especially, A lot of people are afraid of them, aren't they? And they're afraid that they're going to get bit. Now, as I said, he grabbed a hold of my arm, but he did not break the skin. And I knew he was not attacking me. He was
Just let me
showing me
know.
that he was upset. All right. When we give him anything, he'll eat off of a fork or spoon. I am not kidding you, right? The most gentle, shall we call him? Gentle giant. It's absolutely amazing.
You
Do
know
you
what's
think?
interesting? Oh, you keep
I was
going
just
because
going to say,
it just
go ahead, go ahead. Go, no, please.
well, that piece about him laying down, this brings up something around cameo appearances that other animals will make in the body of our current animal. And we'll see this more often when an animal has passed, right? And one of the remaining animals, there'll be a moment where they'll do something that the other animal used to do, or they'll get a look or something. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so and so who crossed over. In this case, it feels like Bridget is showing up for a moment to say thank you,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm good, thank you. And fortunately, right, like Angus got past his pride and will do that. So there's those ways that they can let us know that they're still there. And cats, for some reason, seem to be really open to these cameo appearances of other cats that have passed over and will just show up for a brief moment through that other animal that's still there. So again, I would take that as a deep honoring from Bridget anytime Angus does that, especially since it comes through Angus, right? Who was the one who was like, oh no, 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 no.
Yeah, yeah. And someone even told us, I'd love for your opinion on this. I couldn't believe they even suggested this. We didn't do it because we didn't think it was fair to either of the dogs. But someone said, why don't you just let them both out in the backyard and let them work it out?
You know, there is a school of thought that goes with that, and they'll figure it out. Unfortunately, when you do have big dogs, right? I have a Great Dane, and unfortunately, in one move, he could cause a lot of damage. And you also know your animals really well. And like you said, for him to do that to you, that was a huge sign of his frustration. And the safety of the other animal, we have to look at that, and it can go south so quickly. And trying to break up a dog fight, good grief, right? Like, no one is safe in the middle of something like that. So I always lean towards the human's knowingness about their animal, right? Like, yeah, sometimes we're really upset and we're being overprotective, but more often than not, we have a knowingness of what the potential harm is here. So I feel like you guys really took the right path. You gave her a great home for the time, and then let her go to her next stop.
Yeah. I still have a video of her running around inside a huge fenced area with other dogs and just having the time of her life. And they are loving her around and so forth.
Yes.
We have deer on the property. Now, we just had our backyard fencing realigned due to some work that's being done. So it's sort of made the backyard smaller. But what it's done is it's opened up the area more so that the deer that we have on the property can actually come up even closer to the house. I mean, within feet, single-digit feet of the house. And even when Angus goes out on the porch and he barks like crazy as if he's going to attack, right? I know he's not going to jump through the screening, but still, that's what it sounds like. It's almost like they don't care. We know you can't get to us. We don't care. And even if you could, you couldn't catch us.
Yes, we'll get away.
Right? What about the natural world, the wild kingdom, if you will, in this regard? When you have these kinds of animals, we have bears that may show up. I know bobcats. People have seen bobcats in the area as well, and the list goes on of different critters. What is the most appropriate and humane way to deal with these animals that may or may not necessarily pose a threat?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like I said, I like to couple not just the 3D actions that we're going to do, but look at the energetics, right? Like I picture it almost like a Disney movie. Cue the deer, and the deer shows up, or cue the bear, or whatever it is. And there's a reason, right? Out of all the places in the world that bear, in that area, that bear could go, it showed up where you saw it
Mm-hmm.
at that point in time. And so I put it under the umbrella of animals as messengers, right? They're there to share a message. Like with that hawk,
Yeah.
like you said, you didn't know necessarily the specifics of the symbology, but it felt good.
Yeah.
There was a good feeling, a good omen kind of thing. And so whenever we encounter an animal, especially if it's either out of place or out of character, like you said, within feet of the house, I always like to look at what's the message first so that I can thank them for, because it could go south, right? Your dog could get through and could grab one of them. I mean, the odds are low, but that's
Sure.
always a possibility.
Sure.
Or tangling with a coyote or a bear or whatever it is.
Right.
So I always like to thank them first. Like, what an honor that we cross paths in whatever way that is. And then, of course, looking at the symbology. So when we look at the symbology of a bear, right, it has to do with everything you need is within you, right? When we think about a bear, they go and they hibernate and they have everything they need. Like science doesn't even understand how they slow their whole renal system down so that they can hibernate for those lengths of time. And if they could understand that, that would help kidney patients around the world.
Yeah.
So when we've got that bear showing up, or bobcat or deer, we want to first think about our own personal symbology. What does a bear represent for me? What does a deer represent for me? Whatever the animal is. And then, of course, there's a myriad of books that you can go to, Ted Andrews, Animals Speak, Dr. Stephen Farmer. I can't even remember what his is, Animal Guides or Spirit Animals. Actually, he's got a whole bunch of books too on that. And he is the reason I focused on nature is because my book is one of 9 in a series. And the animal book, they approached me first for nature. And I said, well, I'll do it, but who's doing the animal book, right? If I'm not doing the animal book, I want to know who it is and I want to approve of this. And they asked me, well, they're like, there's a lot of people who do animals, but rarely people are talking about nature. That's why we approached you on the nature. And I said, well, Dr. Stephen Farmer is a friend, a colleague, and a mentor of mine. So I will ask him if he'll do the animal book. And so he did end up doing the animal book. But you can go to any of these animal symbology dictionaries and look that up. But it's more important that your own connotation, that you pay attention to that, because the way that the energy mechanics work is something shows up and it taps your subconscious mind and it goes through your personal files of what you know about that animal. And that is what's being triggered for a message for you personally. So it's great to have the experts weigh in on it, but it's more important your own experience plays into that. So when we do have animals showing up, and it can become either a hazard or a pest, something like that, I like to first acknowledge that they're showing up. And then what do I need to know about this, right? Like we don't want to just put a Band-Aid over something. We really, want to get to the crux of what's going on, right? So you got deer who are eating all your flowers or all your landscaping or whatever that is. We want to look at the energetics of that, and then we can visualize with the animal of what this isn't appropriate, right? Like this is our space. You have all that space. You can also work. Now, this is a whole different area that we haven't talked about, but like the elementals, the fairies.
Mm-hmm.
The fairies have a long tradition of helping humans with pests. Whether it's a mouse in the pantry, deer in your azaleas, whatever it is, work with the fairies to help them be escorted to some place else that's more appropriate.
You got to be careful about that whole chain because You end up with quite a menagerie. Okay, we need to get rid of the bugs. So we're going to bring in the bats. Okay, we got the bats. Okay, now the bats are getting overrulers. We got to find their predator, and so you got one layer on top of another, and before you know it, you're like, okay, we're moving because it's just become untenable. I have to say that's one of the things that we've done, not quite that menagerie, but we have rodents around the place, and it's probably more due to the chickens than anything else, which is fine. And so I would put out traps. I didn't want to use. Now I did actually find an all natural substance that you could put out and mix it with Karo syrup and put it on a plate, and they would eat it, and it would only take them down. Okay, and if another animal ate them, it would not hurt them. Okay. But I thought, I don't feel too comfortable about that. So what we did was we got a couple of barn owl boxes. And I do believe that the owl, I know they're there because we hear them in the evening.
Hear them, yeah.
And so we know that they have something to eat. Those rodents that manage to evade the owl, they've got something to eat. I don't necessarily leave anything out for them, but hey, there's stuff that is left, and so forth. So the chickens are safe; they're secure. We actually lock them up every night in case a predator should break through the chicken run, because it's covered as well as protected on all sides. And it's important to, learn the predatory chain, so that if that's something you feel that you need to do, we have no need to get rid of the deer. We have no need to get rid of the bear. If the bear is even on the property, pardon me, we're both dealing with a throat issue here.
I know, right? We're kind of playing energetic ping pong with that cough. Either you have it or I have it.
Well, I'll tell you. But it is important to figure out whether you really need to get rid of. For example, when it gets warmer, I don't know if this is going to happen, but over the years, some summers we have the problem with ants. How the heck do you get rid of ants? Because they're going to be in the walls already. What are you going to do, So we put out diatomaceous earth. And it's food grade, all right? We put it across the threshold of the doors, along the windowsills, and so forth. And that seems to help. But I don't know what predator we have to bring in. The cats are no help whatsoever. They don't like ants.
Yeah. Visualization, right? We've worked with ants before. Well, first of all, what's the symbology of an ant, right? We want to look at that first, because here's the thing. Animals as messengers, they're so committed to helping us as humans expand and evolve and grow that they will not let up until we get it, even though they know one of the possibilities is death, right? Like, it's just one of the possibilities. And even though, people who are more conscious are going to try everything else first. So with ants, we're looking at community, and we're also looking at they're amazing architects, right? Like, we've got these amazing, they look like these ancient ant hills. They're huge. And so ants have to do with community and creating community. And we can look at, when it gets overrun, where are the aspects of community that are not sourcing us, right? It's pulling us down. It's a problem. And where are the places that it lifts us up? In our garden, we had fire ants take over, and fire ants are like a whole nother level of ant, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oy vey. So we worked a lot with visualization, and we would sit, my partner and I would sit, we did this for about 2 weeks straight, because, as humans, we're not that facile, working energetically, right? Like we want to do something physically and just be done with it. So it can take a little bit longer working in the energy, kind of like when we work with natural things versus a pharmaceutical. It can take a little bit longer. So we would sit out in the garden for about 2 weeks and we would visualize, and we would show them. My partner laughs at me because I don't just visualize, I say it out loud too. It's just part of my process. It's how I work. And he goes, they don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, you don't know that. So I would say it and visualize it. This is where we're growing food. We can't have you there. And we're going to be moving you to a place that's more appropriate for you. And so we would visualize the new place where it was going to be. And we told them, this is what we're going to do when the day comes. We're going to transport the big mass of your little nest through a wheelbarrow, and we're going to move it to a new spot. We're going to try and gather as many of you as together and go there, but that's where you're going to go. So we were showing them this. So the day came, we moved the mass, and there were still a couple, stragglers, and we showed them that's the way you need to go. So then we spent a couple days showing the stragglers which direction they needed to go to get to their new home, to get back with their colony. And then we told them, after this day, we're going to put down diatomaceous earth, and this is what's going to happen. And we explained to them the process so that they had an option. So when it came time to put it down, I especially was so happy that there was hardly any to deal with anymore. And so then we put down the diatomaceous earth, and we didn't have any more problems with them coming back into our garden.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have a crawl space under our house where we can store things. And the last time I went under there to look at things, I found all kinds of stuff that had been chewed into. Even the plastic containers. It's like, they don't care. And it was the rodents, of course. And I thought, well, there are two ways of dealing with this, because obviously it's cool, it's dry, etc., etc. I got another place I can put this stuff in other containers and then put it into the shed, because I've never noticed any problems out under Ben with rodents, because it's far away from the house. I mean, it's almost 100 feet from the house. So if I haven't noticed any problems out there other than all kinds of spider webs and cobwebs inside, which that's typical, doesn't bother me, I'm good with that. That works for me, So sometimes that's maybe the better part. I mean, I'm not saying you sacrifice, let's say, a room in your 3-bedroom house, you sacrifice a bedroom to the animals. No, that's not what I'm saying. But in this case, you consider that storage place under the house as outside. And diatomaceous earth isn't going to do anything to the rodents, And you've got the owls that are out there, on patrol. So, we live with those that are still scurrying around. We can hear the little babies squeaking away somewhere around the apple tree that actually is growing up and over the chicken run, and so forth. Do you find that when you talk with people about this subject in particular, with what they might consider pests or nuisances, after you've had this opportunity to maybe educate them, that they take on a new perspective, a new attitude, a new energy, that actually then they end up contacting you maybe a few weeks later saying, you know what, after I talked with you, the problem went away or it diminished? Or can you share stories about that?
Well, that's exactly how it goes, because when we bring our awareness to something, people will say, "Oh, I would have never considered that, or I didn't think about that." And it's that opportunity for expansion. And when we shift our energy, right, like I said, people will have these crazy lab results for their dog. They meet with me and they have a different perspective on it. They go back, have the blood work rerun, and things are good. And the only thing that changed was the person's perspective. And we've seen it too with like we would say, we'd call them pests, in one way or another. When they get the message that animal was bringing through, they're able to release it in another way. And so I think about, mice is always an issue, right? Because they want to get out of the elements into our nice warm homes, or where the food is, or whatever it might be. And mice have that energy with them and that symbology around the little things in life, the details, right? And with details, we're either overwhelmed by them, there's too many details, and we can't even deal, or we get mired down in the details and we don't make any forward progress. And so when we can look at that and bring that, where are we experiencing that in our lives where the details are too much or we're not paying attention to them, and we can shift our focus, people will say, maybe it's my imagination, but it seems like there's been less. Or, since I talked to you, we haven't even had a problem with that now. And in fact, recently I spoke with a gentleman who was having problems with no-see-ums, right? They're those little tiny, you can't hardly see them. They're actually little flies, tiny, tiny flies, but they bite. And they leave all sorts of little marks on you. And he goes, this doesn't make any sense. They shouldn't even really be in this area where I live. They're typically down south. I'm way up in New York. He goes, I understand they came in with a hurricane, but they should have been gone by now. And I said, well, this is something important too, right? When an animal shows up, whatever it is, or an insect, in a way that's not congruent, it's out of the ordinary. We know they're trying to get a message to us. And insects have to do with our sensitivities, right? The energy. So insects move through the world in a different way than, say, a dog or a cat or a bear. And so we're looking at our energetic sensitivities, and especially any little animal or little insect you think of, no-see-um, a mosquito, a tick, anything like that, especially that affects us in a way. It has to do with, how are you letting the outside energy affect you, get under your skin?
Oh, wow.
Right? I know, right? All of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness. And you think about that, you're like, oh gosh, I hadn't thought of that before. And you only take 2 seconds, look at the news headlines and geez, everything's under my skin, right? So when we look at that, and how are we going to move through our lives that we're in this, but we're not letting it all take us out.
Yeah.
And when we can shift that, and again, there may be other things, like with this guy, we also talked about physical things, certain essential oils, right? With mice too, peppermint, you soak claws in peppermint oil and you put them around the places that they're going to be. They typically do not want to smell that. It's overpowering. With no-see-ums, it's more of the lemongrass, the eucalyptus, the tea tree. You can diffuse that. You also want to have, ventilation, because they're not strong flyers. So there were some physical things. But when he heard that part about the outside world, the outside energy, the negative energy getting under his skin, all of a sudden he was like, I get it. And then it had to do with emotions. I said, so what are the emotions that come up when you realize, Jiminy, these no-see-ums are back again, everything I've done, and they're back again? And he talked about, strong, intense emotions of frustration and anger. And I said, it's interesting, because he actually was a teacher of emotions. He taught people how to deal with emotions. And I said, as the teacher, we get put through the lesson first, always, right? Like, I don't ever get away with anything. I got to go through the lesson first so that I can teach it, so I can share it.
Yeah.
And I said, you're being called to that next level. And what do we need more right now in this world is people who have emotional intelligence, people who can deal with their emotions, because everything has hit the fan, right? And we are gobsmacked. We're not sure how to react. And we're going to that reptilian brain inside that is just reactionary. And when we can be with an emotion, which is simply energy in motion, it guides us to what's wanting to come up, be healed, be released, so that we can have a different perspective, so that we can move forward in a different way.
Unbelievable.
That changed everything for him.
Unbelievable. I mean, just what you just said. which I hope is very insightful to our listeners as well as yours truly. Because even though I have not, and I don't know that I will hit that wall in regards to my sister, okay? Because we all handle it. It's like they say you have no idea what is going to set somebody off and go over the edge, whereas the same person who's experiencing the same thing is like, no big deal. I'm walking. Thank you. I don't know. So I'm just kind of moving through it and and allowing myself just to kind of be there. And then when you say, oh yeah, the teacher goes through it first to learn the lesson, and maybe I learned it years and years and years ago, and so I was just kind of there, and I didn't say a whole lot to people. I have to share with this one funny story from the memorial of my sister. First of all, the display that they had in the front of the church was on the left side was an open instrument case and her French horn sitting upright. On the right was her wheelchair with her beautifully adorned and ornate cane. And in between those two was this beautiful wreath of flowers. And the memorial was consisting of a series of photographs. Now, my brother-in-law, from the day I met him, when she brought him home for the very first time, always had a camera with him. Always. And so he had thousands of pictures. They were married for 40 years. And he even talked about that. He says, yeah, I had to cull it down to 300. Well, that was the first batch at the beginning. At the end, it was just pictures of them. And they played some special songs and so forth. And then the pastor came up right before my brother-in-law came up to make his final comments. And the pastor made this comment. Now, I have 4 sisters who were part of the pack, and 1 brother, total of 6. And of course, my sister has passed. So now there's 3 sisters and 1 brother. And he says, and I want to thank this person, that person. I want to thank Jeanette's mother for being here today to share with us, and all of her sisters. By the way, the sisters got to go up and speak and read a statement that they had written and so forth. But my brother and I weren't asked, primarily because at first I thought I would take offense, and then I thought, well, they didn't really know that we were actually going to be here, so they couldn't really ask us to get up there and say anything. But he goes on, he says, I want to thank the sisters for being here and Jeanette's brother. So I began thinking, okay, which brother's he talking about? And does that make, we stopped making this joke when my mother made a comment to us. That makes one of us illegitimate. My brother says it's me. Well, as I said, we stopped making that joke because my mother did not find it funny. Anyway, but it was just kind of a funny little twist, and they saw him probably more than they saw me because it was much more difficult for me to travel because we've got the animals. But that was one of those humorous moments that I took, and it was just, and I actually I became the observer, not hardly, other than immediate relatives, my aunts or uncles and so forth, who came up and said hello. Most everybody else, they didn't know who I was. And I didn't even make the effort to introduce myself as her brother. I just figured, thank you for coming, blah, 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 and just be the observer. And it was just very interesting. But it was the most beautiful mixture between laughter and tears. But talking about animals, and I can tie this in, they apparently had 2 dogs along the way. And apparently the second dog, according to Perry, did not get along with the pastor, did not get along with anybody. Or at least it didn't get along with him. And of course, one of my sisters is sitting next to me saying, well, I don't know what he's talking about. He got along with me just fine. Do you find that animals, especially domesticated pets especially, maybe not so much cats, but more so dogs, It doesn't matter what you do, that as long as you maintain the attitude that you have, the energy that you have, if they don't like you, they're never going to like you. Whereas if you change your perspective, your attitude, your energy, then they are more likely to make that shift also.
Yes, exactly. Ding, 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 right? Like you win the prize. That's exactly what it is. And as humans, this is the thing, is if an animal reacts to us in a weird way, like we get offended, right? And we're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, why? And so we try harder almost. And the animal's like, whoa, I already said you were too much, right? And here's an interesting piece. I was at my chiropractor, and she has a dog who's been through a lot of trauma, and she brings it to work sometimes when she knows which patients are going to be coming in. And so I came in, and sure enough, the dog like goes nuts. And what, again, I know better. I know not to like push myself or force myself on the animal at all. So I just moved to the chair right away, and I sat down, and I actually turned my back to her. And sure enough, she stopped barking, although she was kind of muttering, right? But I could hear she was coming closer because she was curious at least. And so she could smell me. And then she was still like, well, I don't know. But then she was happy and she could go lay down. And then when I walked back, she kind of looked at me, but she was like, all right, you're going to be okay. You know that I'm the boss, so everything's going to be okay. But it's that energy that we exude. And as humans, we think we always have to be doing something, right, to make it better, when really just back off. It's the same thing like with cats, right? Like they want to do it on their terms, right? But if you go trying to chase the cat down, that's not going to go anywhere, right? But if you just sit down and get quiet, more than likely that cat's going to come out just out of curiosity and come closer. But if we're like, I got to make this animal, like, it's like a person, right? Like when somebody's like trying too hard with us, we're like, dude, back off, right?
Yeah.
But when they just are themselves and they back off some, then we can see the merit in having an interaction with them. But we don't think about our energy, right? We just think about our motive, but motive alone isn't enough.
Yeah. I've noticed that with only a few people in my life, most recently, where I finally had to unofficially cut ties with them. If they call me, I'm going to answer. I'm not going to be rude because we didn't have a falling out. But we have a difference of energy, a difference of perspective, and so forth. And it has nothing to do with politics or anything. It's just the energy and the intensity. And it's like, you know what? I can't deal with this, and I'm not asking you to change. Okay, that would be wrong of me to ask someone to change. Okay, and yeah, I could change my perspective, and I'm not being prideful and saying no, I'm not going to change. No, that's not because that's not where I'm coming from. It's like, look, you're coming on way too strong for me. All right, you're a wonderful person. I've enjoyed our interactions for the most part, but I have a limit. That is part of what I talk about in my book, Choices, about your personal input matching your choice. And that includes the people around you. When it comes to people, do you think the same thing applies, or is it the reverse? That whereas with animals, they choose us, we don't choose them. It doesn't matter whether I don't care if you went to the pound and you saw that animal in the cage and you said, yeah, that one. No. They chose you regardless of the fact that you think you chose them. But does it work the opposite, where we actually do choose the people, the humans? Or is it still the other way around in terms of we draw to us and into our lives? And again, going back to what you said earlier, for the lessons we have to learn first in order to be able to teach others.
You said it perfectly right there.
Okay.
The people, the circumstances, the situations come into our life as we need, right? Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Any of those pieces and everything, I believe it was Rumi who said, treat your life like a guest house. You're at this house, and whatever packages show up, you know, you need to at least acknowledge them.
Mhm.
and and at the same time, right, you don't have to invite somebody in that you're not vibing with, invite them in for tea. You don't have to do that, but you do have to acknowledge and pay attention on our own end. You don't even have to work it out with them. But
Mhm.
what got triggered in me around that person, right? Like, why did I feel rubbed the wrong way? Or why did I feel so drawn? We never ask that, right? Like, why did I feel so drawn to this person? We usually only ask, man, why did that person not sit well with me? But it's usually they have some component of energy that correlates with something that's not yet either healed or revealed within our own energetic makeup. And it gives us an opportunity, right? Or even when we look and it feels brutal to think about this, but we do create our reality. And some of the creation happened before we even got here. We were deciding, what body, what family. Oh my goodness, family dynamics alone can teach us so many things. And whether you had a great upbringing or you weren't parented in the way that you needed to be parented, all of that adds to your own expansion if you let it, right? And when we're constantly in that place where we want the past to be different, we're never going to be at ease. We're never going to have that peace. We're never going to step into our full expansion and our full expression if we're always wishing things or people or situations were different than they are, because we're fighting with reality at that point. And instead, we don't have to like it, but we need to be with it and see what it brings up and see what it's asking for us either to lean into or to let go of or to make peace with. And it has very little to do with that person.
Yeah.
It's all an inside job.
You know, on the one level, to someone who's just kind of maybe, I don't know, you want to say necessarily tuning in for the first time, man, this is complicated. You got the energy of the trees and the plants and then the animals and then the humans, and I can't take it. No. And yet, the reality is, it is extremely, almost mind blowingly simple. It's all about you as the individual, isn't it? It's like it doesn't matter about all of that other energy. Where are you coming from? Let's keep it simple.
Yes, it's simple, but not always easy, right?
Well, that's
That's
true.
the thing. That's it in a nutshell. And one of my courses, my signature course, is Animals as Messengers, and we go through the different modules. So the first one is about animals in the wild, right? And how could you and I be out and have an experience with an animal, and there's a generic meaning, but then for each of us there's more of a personal meaning going on. And then we get into the animal companions and what's going on with them. What are they showing us? How can we be with them in a different way? How can we be in collaboration with them instead of doing things to them, to be in collaboration with them? And the last module is the module that people find, mind blown is the comment that I get more often than not
Mhm.
as people go through the modules. But when they get to the one on shadow animals, they're like, I never thought of that. So a shadow animal, so we all know about power animals, right? Like
Mhm.
hawk or bear or wolf. Everybody wants the really cool power animals.
Yeah.
And they're these animals that in energy are supporting us in one way or another. So a shadow animal is an animal that brings up those intense emotions, but usually of the lower vibration, like fear, lions, tigers, bears, creepy crawlies, all of that brings up something strong. But a shadow animal can also be our dying, aging animals who are abused, right? Like if we read, any animal lover reads a story about mistreatment of animals anywhere, oh my goodness, right? Like a fire has been lit under us. We are like, no, but hell no, this is not going to happen anymore. And we send energy back, right? Like we hear about mistreatment and we're like, we want that same thing to happen to those people that did that to that animal.
Mhm.
It makes sense logically, right? But when we look at it from an energetic level, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can drive out darkness. And so if we send back that same energy, we're not helping. We're creating more of the same.
Yeah.
We're adding ingredients, fuel to the fire. So when we shift and we learn how to be with that, right? Because hurt people or hurt animals or hurt whatever. And it's not that that gives people carte blanche to do whatever they want, but it allows us to be with it in a different way. And it also triggers things to us, right? Most animal lovers are people who have been through things in their life and they're like, oh, I want to be a protector. I want to be a guardian. I want to stand up. And when we see that, it puts us into that action. But it doesn't matter what we do or we don't do. It's the energy that's behind it that's really going to affect everything. So when we come at these situations, these shadow animals in a different way, we have the opportunity to transform a shadow animal into a power animal. And for me personally, that came with spiders. I used to be like deathly afraid of spiders. I couldn't kill them because I was too afraid of them. And I'm glad I couldn't kill them because I didn't need any more bad karma. But I also couldn't run away. I would just freeze until I could get my whereabouts for somebody to relocate it or, whatever. And I was going through a time in my life where I had my big life tsunami, right? Everything seemed to fall apart. I lost my job, my relationship, one of my soul animals died. I was having to go through my stuff because I was having to leave my home. And I'm going through books and CDs, whatever. And I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor doing this, and I'm in shorts. And I look down, you got that little triangle in your legs, and there's a black widow sitting there. Very close to very sensitive tissue, right? Like, oh my gosh. And I've got this huge fear of spiders, but I'm starting to learn at this point about energy and everything. And I'm like, okay, I've got some choices here, right? Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, right? And I'm like, well, first you got to breathe. That's going to be the first thing. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to hurt you and I don't want you to hurt me. And I got to get you out of here, and then I'll focus on what the message is. So somehow I was able to get myself up without disturbing her, scoop her into something and relocate her somewhere where she would be safe. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I started leaning into, right, I got out one of my books and, okay, spiders and black widow spiders. So spiders have to do with what are you weaving, right, in your life? What are you weaving with your thoughts? Right now, can you imagine what my thoughts were as I'm going through my stuff, having to leave my home? It was not, oh yay, I'm a powerful creator, let me see what I can create. It was, woe is me, why is this happening to me? What did I do? Na 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 na. Low vibration, low vibration, low vibration. And a venomous spider has to do again with the outside energy. Where are you letting that poison, those toxic thoughts into your life? And as soon as I thought of that, I was like, oh my gosh, it's constant, right? My thoughts are constantly not what's right here, but what's wrong here. And I needed to make that shift. Also at that time, I wasn't conscious about food, right? Anything you put in, on, or around your body, you have to process either physically and energetically. So I was learning about the garbage that I was putting into my body and wondering why I wasn't feeling great, even though I was technically healthy. And so I had to come into a new relationship with everything, but spider energy especially. And now, flash forward, I'm to a point where I can pick up a spider and relocate it. Or I don't have to relocate it. I'm fine. In fact, here in my office, there's this little tiny spider that will come out from underneath the radiator every once in a while, say hi, and then run back and go in. And I'm reminded, oh, what am I creating? Would I want to encounter this web again? And it puts me in a right frame of mind really quickly.
Wow. However, that takes awareness. It really does. It takes awareness of being cognitive of the signs, as well as aware of what those signs mean, that symbology, And That is something I take it that you can help people with as well. You have writings of your own that will guide people through that process of maybe flipping through. It's okay. I saw this, and what does that mean for me? And of course, each one has to interpret it for themselves. But you give some basic info, right?
Absolutely. And like I said, that Animals as Messengers course is a great piece. In fact, I have a certification program that helps people communicate with animals, become animal communicators, and help people understand the messages coming from animals. And Animals as Messengers is a standalone course, but it's also the first module in that course because it's so important. And we go through the symbology of a lot of different common animals that people are going to come across, or insects, or whatever it may be. And like you said, it's great to know what I think about it, but it's more important that each person starts to feel in what goes on for them, right? Like when you see that spider, what are your thoughts? What are the emotions? And again, you retrain your brain to think differently. I feel like I'm the poster child for this because I used to be a hot mess, right? Like my thought, everything, if you looked in, I did everything, right? I was well papered and I did what I was supposed to do and, da 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 da. But I was miserable inside. I was just absolutely miserable. And my thoughts were creating more misery over and over. And then you wonder, well, why is that happening? I'm a good person. But we have a well-worn path to what we don't want instead of having a well-worn path to new possibilities. So it's a shift in your mindset and it's a practice. And for me, the animals in nature are the easiest way for me to get that, right? For some people, it's angels or ascended masters or their relatives who've crossed over or whatever it is. Maybe it's their religion. But for me, it's animals in nature. And that can always bring me back, right? And I don't, right now, actually, I've got a fly I'm going to have to help him go someplace else because he won't make it in here on his own. But flies have to do with persistence that leads to abundance. And so I'm like, thank you, right? Like, where could I be more persistent to bring in even more abundance, right? And so I'm going to, I'm actually an expert flycatcher without harming them. My partner's always amazed. He's like, how many did you relocate today? And, I'll tell him. And I'm like, I don't know. It works. I let him know I'm not trying to hurt you, but where you're going, you're not going to get to the outside that you want. So stay still for a second. I like a shot glass and a piece of paper and I get them moved. But so I promise you, I will help you after we're done.
There you go. There you go. We're talking with Ana Maria Vasquez. The book is entitled Nature. This is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are so grateful for your returning to this program to talk more about the work that you are doing and helping people, especially with this particular program, talking about animals. Intentiontraining.com is her website. We're going to have a special link for this particular interview that will take you to her website through a particular portal, if you will. It's still her website, but it will support her with the things that you are able to participate in and purchase through her website, as well as Tell Me Your Story. And I want to thank you folks for doing that. So be sure to go to the link that we will have up for this particular website. I will actually place this link in a visual spot in the video that you can see up on YouTube. So at least you'll see it, and you can at least take it down from that standpoint. I haven't yet figured out Ana Marie, how to actually make a link in a video. I know there's a way to do it. I just haven't figured that out yet. I'm working on it, a little at a time. But I thank you so much for talking with us again. And obviously, there's a lot more we can discuss, and I think we will. I think we'll talk more about many of these other things that it's like what you were talking earlier when it came to the insects in particular, and some of the we'll call them repellents. Like peppermint and things of this nature. A lot of people don't know about these things, but I tell you what, it's one of the first things that we go to, whether it's Google or one of the books that my wife has as an herbologist, to try to figure out, okay, how can we can't get rid of them because they're everywhere, okay? All we can do, as the one guy told us, all you can do is manage it. And do the best you can to try to keep them from coming in Well, another way to do that is again through understanding what you have talked about here on the program today. And again, I thank you so much.
It's so fun, right? To have these conversations, to have these ahas, the insights, and to realize that there's another way to do this. And we don't have to be up against it or us versus them. There can be a different way for us to move through it and hopefully have even better results.
Absolutely. You can learn grounded processes that will actually move you into a state of presence, raising your vibration with grace and ease so you can receive a clear and concise message from nature. So practice forest bathing, stone gazing, sacred herbal baths. That's a fun one. I think that would be wonderful too because you have great sense and so forth. And work with a medicine wheel to deepen your relationship with our sacred allies. And we're talking about the plants, the animals, just nature in general, and quite honestly, other human beings as well. So please pick up a copy of Nature, go to her website. In this case, I'll go ahead and give this to you. It's intentiontraining.com, but follow the link that we will have up on the SoundCloud website as well as, well, I'll have it up visually on the YouTube screen so that you will be able to at least take it down and go there through that particular portal. First, before we let you go here, Ana Maria Vasquez, I want to let our listeners and viewers know that you are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We are also streaming those programs live at those times at richarddugan.com. The podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeart, Amazon Music, and many other locations on the internet. And we're also, as I mentioned earlier, we're on YouTube. That's right, we're on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. And we hope that you'll subscribe as well. I will also tell you, as of this program, I have a whopping 67 subscribers on YouTube. And I have over 82,000 listens on sound through SoundCloud's RSS feed. Really simple. I'm trying to remember the last. Really simple script is what they call that, RSS feed, and over 82,500 listens since January 1 of 2018. Boy, thank you so much for listening to and also watching Tell Me Your Story. If you'd like to support, of course, the work that we are doing here, if it resonates with you, number one, you can certainly go to the link that we will provide you for the Intention Training website, as well as going to PayPal. And you can go to PayPal and you can support us with any amount. We are so grateful for whatever you're able to send us, folks. And basically, you'll put in my email address when it asks who you're sending this to, richard@richarddugan.com. Quite simple, richard@richarddugan.com. And a very important component we've talked about on this program today as well as before, we want you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, where we ask you to go within and listen to that still small voice. Get the guidance and the understanding. Get the definition, the understanding of the symbology of the animals that are coming into your life that sometimes just cross the road. I mean, sometimes that's quite a message to you. So keep that in mind. Go within and spend that quiet, peaceful place. Spend time in that quiet, peaceful place. With that, we're going to go ahead and ask you what we asked you the last time, the 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. Sometimes the answers change. So with that in mind, the first of those 3 questions is, who is Ana Maria Vasquez?
I would say I am the consummate nature girl, right? Like, I'm never happier if my hair is unbrushed and I am barefoot outside, sitting with the trees, with my animals, sitting with the rocks, anytime I can be outside. And if there's music, right? Like, we now choose, because music is a huge part of our lives, but now we're very selective, and we typically choose outdoor venues. And we live in Colorado, so we have a lot of phenomenal venues that include mountains and rivers and all sorts of things like that. So I would say music music, mountains, and friends.
Fantastic. What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
For me, it's about helping people remember these connections, right? Like it's not necessarily intuitive. We don't necessarily go to it, but when we remember it, it creates that profound aha. So helping people remember.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
It's definitely an offshoot of that. Helping people remember their connection. Excuse me. And I like to call it helping folks unpack their intuitive backpacks, because you can't always tell what's in your own backpack unless you have someone help you.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I find it real interesting, and we're both going to have to find out what the symbology is behind the tickle in our throats here on this program today. Folks, you probably haven't been hearing it because we have been doing our utmost to mute ourselves, because it's just, we don't need to, you don't need to hear that. But there's a reason that this is happening, and this is part of that process that Ana Maria Vasquez has been sharing with us here on this program. So we're very grateful for that as well. And again, I thank you so much. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I'm listening.